Hey guys, it's Goosebumps Completionist, and today I'm bringing you another episode review, this time coming from Season 1, and it's one of the R.L. Stine specials. I think it's the last one I needed to cover from Season 1, and it is A Night in Terror Tower. I watched this episode a lot when I was a kid. Honestly, I had the VHS. I think the only R.L. Stine special I did not have on VHS and like in my personal collection was Night of the Living Dummy 3, but I had all the other ones. And I watched this one pretty religiously growing up. I would watch this one more than like Welcome to Dead House, because Welcome to Dead House was just inherently scarier than this episode to me. But I loved watching this episode just to put on, to be mindless drabble. And the setting usually captivated me. It got me when I was a kid, I was really interested in history and like medieval stuff. I was really into like knights and stuff. So I would watch this to kind of like supplement that more so than horror. But this one was a well watched episode when I was a kid, and it became a personal favorite from my childhood. When I got older and started watching more Goosebumps episodes, this one's unfortunately kind of fell in my appreciation for it. Same thing with like Bride of the Living Dummy. But I still think this episode holds up well. This episode's directed by William Fruitt. I think this is definitely one of his more memorable episodes to me. Maybe not his best, I would say, but definitely for the setting and budget, I think this episode clearly reflects really good budget, really good setting for the show. I think this is a big high point, maybe next to like the Werewolf of Fever Swamp, for like just nailing the aesthetic. I'll even say Welcome to Dead House does it too, and same thing with the Haunted Mass R.L. Stine specials. For some reason, any R.L. Stine special nails like scenery and atmosphere, and this episode is very remarkable for a lot of traits it has. The teleplay is written by Dan Angel and Billy Brown, and this episode does feature some changes from the source material that aren't featured in the book. Most notably is that the episode is a two-parter, and in part two, it actually adds a climax and ending that the book didn't have, and I'll get into that in the plot overview. But yeah, this episode's pretty solid. I don't think this is a personal favorite anymore, but I really respect it in a lot of ways, and that will definitely reflect in my review portion. So yeah, let's get into the plot overview without giving too much away, okay? So, in the episode, in part one, it kicks off with Sue and Eddie arriving at Terror Tower off this red bus. The red bus is famously coined in like London, the London area, where you have the double-decker red buses. And they get off the bus, and it's really cold outside. You could tell that the episode was filmed when it was colder. It was filmed in Canada, so you can see like the breath and people wearing jackets or snow on the ground. And this tour guide pops out after this cutout from this screen in front of the Terror Tower Museum, and the tour guide pretty much guides them into the tower just like the book. The tour guide is a snarky kind of guy, but before they go in to follow the tour guide after he makes a joke, Eddie thinks he sees a ghost or some type of entity on top of the tower trying to tell him to go away. And when he confronts Sue about it, Sue doesn't really believe him, and they both follow the group into Terror Tower so they don't get left behind. They start touring this tower place, which looks really cool. It looks like a medieval tower that you would find in England, even though it was filmed in Canada somewhere. I'm assuming that the place they filmed it was built by the British at some point, maybe the French, but and it looks really old, looks very historic, very well done for the set piece chosen there. And they head into the tower portion through like this like nice carpeted museum area, and they head down into the execution chamber area, and this is where it cuts to visions on the screen of the group witnessing these dummies. Even though in the episode, back in the day on like box TVs, I couldn't tell if these were dummies or humans, and after seeing it on like a flat screen TV today, I can tell you that they are actual people. So they use actual people to pose as dummies here, but yeah, they're on this thing that that pulls people's limbs out of the sockets, and you can see where they have all over the room what would have gone on down in the execution chamber. They even have a dummy wax figure of the executioner holding a giant axe. And Sue has brought her camera, and the two throughout the exhibit are trying to goof and take pictures, and Eddie's trying to take a funny picture with the executioner guy. And when Sue goes to snap the picture, she thinks that she sees the executioner guy come to life. And there's also a really funny scene that happens in the execution chamber where Eddie's like, torture? We're going to torture chamber? Or like torture execution chamber, same thing. And that's always a funny line. I've loved that line ever since I was a kid. I don't know why. It's just really funny. But yeah, Sue takes a picture and thinks that she sees the executioner guy move, and she kind of falls, and the axe falls like towards her, and Eddie tries to help Sue up, and the tour guide's like, hey, no messing with the props here. And then they have to wait in this long line to head up to the North Tower for the next part of the exhibit. And when they head up to the North Tower, Sue and Eddie hear about the legend of this prince and princess of York who tragically met their fate in like the 13th, I think maybe 13th, 14th, or 15th centuries from this king who like usurped power from their family, and the kids were sentenced to death in the tower. And when Sue and Eddie hear this story, it kind of freaks them out, and they see writing on the wall that says, I think it says, "Don't come back" or something. I don't know. I don't remember what it says, but it says something on the wall, and it's different from the book. The book doesn't have any writing, but there's actual writing on the wall here. And when they look at the wall, they see the apparition of this ghost telling them to go away, stay away, and it's already too late since they're in the room. They look out the window, and there's a thundercloud effect, kind of darkens and turns black, and Eddie and Sue get kind of disoriented, and they have to find their way back to the group. So they decide to go find a way out of the tower to go find the group. And when they make their way down, they realize that everyone's gone, and they make their way into this dark corridor that they hadn't been to on the tour. And what happens is that they see there's this black hooded figure guy with a hat following them. And when they're stopped at a dead end, they don't know where they are. They're confronted by this guy, and they think that he's a worker there. And the guy basically reveals that he wants them to come with him and don't run, or he's going to have to hurt them. So the kids freak out when he grabs Eddie's wrist, and it hurts Eddie, and they try to run. So they make their way into a room that wasn't a part of the tour. Looked like maybe they were closing it for renovations or something. And they see this, they almost trip over this body on the floor, and then they hear the executioner guy come in, or the black cape guy, and they see this opening by this old prison door, the metal doors, where there's a funny little fake out of this human acting as a dummy going with his hand like this. And they see this opening, and they crawl into it, trying to run away from the man in black. And when they run, they make their way into the sewer system, and they think that there's a way out through the sewer system, so they try to follow the tunnels, and they start running down the tunnels, and the man in black starts following them, and Sue drops her camera, and she tries to pick it up, but it's too late, so they just abandon it and keep running. And they end up to finding the manhole, and the man in black catches up to him and starts climbing and grabs Eddie's leg before he's able to escape. And then there's a funny scene of bats coming through the tunnel, and making the guy like drop Eddie, and he's like screaming. It reminds me of like the scene in Home Alone 2 when Marv gets the pigeons on him, and the guy's like swatting him away like frantically, and he has this funny little squaw scream when the Eddie escapes the manhole with Sue. It's hilarious. But yeah, Eddie and Sue escape, and it's now late. It's after the tower is closed, and this worker guy stops them, and he's like, "I'm the only one that's here." And they say, "Well, this guy chased us in the tower." He's like, "That can't be. This isn't right. I don't trust you guys. I'm gonna call the police." Kind of different from the book there, but Sue and Eddie decide to run away from him, and they flag down this taxi driver who is this old man who's also different from the episode in the book. In the book, he's like a younger guy with blonde hair. They hop in the cab and they say, "Take us to our hotel," and the cab driver's taking them. And then it cuts to during the cab ride. It cuts to nighttime, and um, they pull up to the hotel, and Sue tries to pay the cab driver with the money she has in her pocket, and the guy's like, "I don't accept this money. I need British pounds." And Sue's like, "Well, my parents have the money. Can I go inside and get my parents to come down and pay you?" And he's like, "5 minutes, and don't make me come in there." He looks very scary. So they leave the cab and they go into the hotel lobby, and they can't remember what room they were in. So they go ask the concierge and say, "Hey, can you find a room?" And they say look up their names, and then they can't remember their names. They can't remember their last name, and this freaks them out. And then it kind of cliffhangs when they can't remember their last name. It cuts to part 2, and it picks up where it left off. And part 2 begins with them trying to remember the last name. They can't remember. They can't remember the day before. They can't remember anything. So they get freaked out when they see that the cab driver has come into the lobby looking for these kids. So they decide to go hide in the restaurant nearby. And there's a jacket policy for the gentleman, so Eddie has to go steal a jacket to wear in the restaurant, which I don't know if I've covered this about Eddie, but just like the book, Eddie's kind of a pickpocket, so he knows his way around stealing things. So he's able to steal the jacket. Now, when they go in the restaurant, they sit down, and this is where some Flanderization goes on with some characters, with some British folks, waiters and what have you. And they sit down and they try to order something, and then they get a little spooked about, like, what if their parents, they can't remember their parents, they can't remember any of this, they can't remember the day before. Like I said, they keep going into that thought, and then they see the cab driver guy again, and they decided to bolt and hide. But before that happens, Sue gets this vision of this woman, like this woman wearing older clothes, like with a turkey leg. And this really spooks her a little bit, because she's like, well, like this can't be real. She like rubs her eyes, and like the woman's gone, and she says something's weird. They have to get out of here. So they try to run away because they know that they can't one, pay for the food they order, and two, they want to escape from the cab driver. So they run into the kitchen, and that's when they're cornered by the man in black, who demands from Eddie that he gives back the stones that he stole from him. And now these stones are important to the story because the stones are somehow linked to time travel. And Eddie had pickpocketed one or two of the stones from the man in black during their altercation, either in the sewer or when they first met. And once he gets the stones back, he grabs Eddie and says the spell, and Sue's trying to grab for Eddie, but it's too late. There's a white flash, and there's a scene where it cuts to, and Sue's laying by herself in this like alleyway, hallway type of thing, and it's lit by candlelight, and she has no idea where she is. And when she tries to find her way out, she realizes that she's in like this old-timey English village, and London is definitely different. I guess she puts two and two in her head that there's time travel, because everybody's looking at her like, when she tries to ask them questions, they're trying to avoid her, or they think she looks weird. And she is very apprehensive, and then she hears this big gate open from like this castle area, so it's kind of trying to replicate like a medieval a medieval like serfdom type of thing, where like villages would be surrounded by this castle with like warlords leading it, and the guy comes out and he's greeted as the Lord High Executioner, and she's like, Executioner, what's going on? And he basically puts out a bulletin to find Sue. So Sue runs and tries to hide. She asks this woman to hide her. She offers to pay her with the money she has, and the woman's like, oh, this is really good money, I'll take it. She hides her, like the book, hides her in this basket thing, and then somehow the Lord High Executioner in this version picks the right cottage, asks her where she is, and the woman reveals where Sue is she's inside the basket. So he opens the basket and grabs her out, and then they chain her to this like cart thing, and then they wheel her up to Terror Tower. Now Eddie's been missing this whole time, and when Sue is taken up to the North Tower, where early on in the story they had this weird vision with like the thunderstorms and the ghost guy, they're thrown up into the tower, and Sue is reunited with Eddie, and Eddie was captured off screen, kind of like the book, and then they encounter this guy named Morgrid, and Morgrid reveals himself to be a sorcerer for the king, and Morgrid, similarly to the book, reveals that he's the one responsible for sending Sue and Eddie back in time to save their lives, and that they are the Prince and Princess of York, Susanna and Edward. And they're like, we don't believe you, and they're like, he's like, it's true. It's like, and he gives the same spiel like the book, like, I tried to send you back, but the spell wasn't perfect. It didn't, the memories didn't work the way I intended it to. And then once they kind of regress even further, then there's a scene where they just transform into like princess and prince gowns, and now they're Edward and Susanna, and they have British accents again. They're like, oh, now we remember Morgrid. And then the executioner team comes up to the North Tower and takes all three to the climax. Now, this is where the episode adds to that the book doesn't. It has a climax here. So the executioners and the team take them down to the area where early on where they were touring, where they would do the executions. They took them down there, and they ordered that they be beheaded because the uncle that usurped the throne had told the executioner to execute them because they are the rivals to the throne. So Edward, Morgrid, and Susanna were ordered to be executed by beheading. And there's this really foreboding atmosphere, like these kids are about to get like beheaded or something. Now, what happens is that Eddie throws this big tantrum, trying to hug the executioner, trying to beg for his life. The executioner says, it's not going to work on me, you have to go, like it has to be done. And then Eddie reveals that he stole the stones from him and tosses them to Morgrid, and Morgrid does a spell that may or may not save them, and then the executioner may or may not be trying to interfere with Morgrid during the spell. And then it cuts to a new part of the story, presumably back to present day, and this time Sue, Eddie, and Morgrid are all in the same place, and somehow they've retained their memory this time through this spell, even though it's the same exact spell, presumably, that sent them back before. Really never made sense, just like the book. And they go off to have their happy ending, but the ending's kind of different in that there's a little twist to it, and maybe they maybe didn't get out of the situation as clean as they could have. And that essentially is the Nine Terror Tower two-part episode here. Okay, so let's get into the strengths. Catherine Short's performance as Sue was rock solid. So much so that she has replaced Sue in my head when I read A Nine Terror Tower. She's phenomenal in this. Corey Sevier plays Corey. He adds a little bit of a fun Home Alone type of kid actor flair to the character. He has some comedic relief to him, some funny one-liners. The setting was really good. The choice was really good. It felt like a medieval tower. Really captured that atmosphere. It felt cold. It felt like England because it's a cold place. You know, it just felt really accurate. I appreciate the effort that went into this. The effects were actually pretty good for Fruit standards, for like CGI effects. So good for you, Fruit, on this. Improvement on some other things you've done. The cinematography was great. It felt like a higher budget episode. You really can tell. In the teleplay, I really appreciated the changes Dan Angel and Billy Brown added to the script to improve some plot issues the book had. Really appreciated a lot of that. Felt like a lot of heart and soul was put into this episode. But I do have my negatives with it. And one of my striking negatives comes from the similar issue I have with the book, with Morgred's spell. Like, how does Morgred mess up the spell, right? Morgred messes up the spell, and then it's like imperfect. But at least in the book, at least in the episode, it's Morgred casting the spell again. But I still don't understand, like, what happened to, like, there's some context missing. I feel like it's like half resolved. It's not as bad as the book, but it's still like half resolved. Like, what about the spell was imperfect the first time? I just don't get it. It still feels like slight plot convenience. There was a little bit of Flanderization going on with the restaurant staff and a few of the hotel staff. I felt like that was kind of just leaning to the poor taste kind of thing. You know, and Fruitt kind of does this. He kind of leans into some humor in some episodes, but I feel like he Flanderized some of these accent characters and just kind of took away from that scene a little bit. Some spotty choices I'm not going to deduct points on here and there, with like human dummies playing dummies, and some random vision things with like the woman eating a turkey leg felt kind of weird, but you know, I'm not going to deduct any points on it. Felt kind of spotty, but they're entertaining nonetheless, so not really going to deduct anything on that. But the big drawback I have with the episode essentially is that how it just didn't try to improve on the action sequences. It just didn't even try. It just kept that formula. It felt kind of more close to the book than I wanted it to be. Just because of the chase scenes, I kind of wish they did more than just chase scenes. And I was hoping the episode, you know, after reading the book, you know, I used to not think this before I read the book, but after I read the book the first time and, you know, subsequent times, I just wish that the episode tried to improve the book on that. It just doesn't do it. But I'm not going to be as harsh on the episode as the book, because the pacing is improved here, cuts out some slight filler the book had, and those chase scenes aren't as profound as the book, and the book didn't meander in certain parts long, like, or at least how it felt compared to the episode, which I think had a pretty decent pace going for it. For a 42-minute episode, it was pretty good pace. So yeah, for the issues I had, I decided to deduct 0.1 on the Flanderizing of those British characters. I just felt like it was bordering unnecessary, kind of like poor taste. The half resolution with Morgred's spell, like, being fixed, like Eddie's not the one casting the spell like the book, it's Morgred casting the spell again, but still really no concrete answer of like how that came to be the first time. It feels like slight plot convenience, so I'm not going to be as harsh on it. So I only deducted 0.1 off for that. Then I deducted 0.3 off for the chase scenes. I'm just not a fan of it, even on screen. It's just I'm like, whatever. But everything else was really good. Like, you had a menacing acting performance from the executioner guy, who felt more foreboding because of the changes in the episode. Great performances from the main characters, the leads. Great setting, great atmosphere. Very well respected to the book. Very good music score. I forgot to mention the music score, but the music score is really well done here as well. You can feel the tension in the story. I mean, it's just a pretty well done episode. So from a 0 to 5 stars, I think I might give it a lot more respect than I might give it a little bonus point here. I could be a lot harsher on it, but I think I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5. I think I might give this an A. I think it improves the book. I think it just offers a better solution to the plot than the book did. And I think that the changes definitely made this version of the story earn at least a 4.5, which is a low A, but at least it's an A. I think it's great. Highly recommend this episode if you have never watched it. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the Untitled Chapter episode. Let me know down in the comment section if you have watched this before. Do you love this or do you hate this? I'm dying to know, and I'll see you next time.